Greetings. We are out and about today, about to link up with a close friend and do some brunching. So I'm excited and I look cute. But there's something that's been on my mind that I mentioned before in one of my classes, but I do not know if I mentioned it on a live. So I want to discuss it in a live. Now, I will be pausing periodically to listen to my GPS because directions are essential to anywhere that you are headed in Atlanta proper or even metropolitan Atlanta, greater Atlanta. Anywhere you headed, you got to have directions. So I'm going to be pausing to listen to my directions. I hate how my car squashes my hair down. It's so irritating. So whether I'm wearing an afro, whether I'm wearing braids, y'all know I always got to have the hair big and feathered out. And it always gets squashed down. But anyway, all of this is outside of the topic of what I came on here to talk about. First, let me begin by saying this is Got to Be Oshun Television. I am the Apetabi Ielosha Oshun Yemi Akalatunde. And here on this channel, I give Black women and femmes the tools that are required to end the lifelong patterns and social conditioning of muling and mammying, and to instead use your energy towards fulfilling your own destiny. So, welcome. You are here. We are here. And today I want to talk about the snubbing of our mother's genius. I want to talk about this new level of snubbing of our mother's genius. So, you have heard me speak about the Enlightenment era. And the Enlightenment era is a philosophical era that coincides with enslavement and colonialization and the taking of the land of the indigenous people of Turtle Island, as well as the Caribbean and all throughout the world, and indeed, and the enslavement of mostly Western Central Africans. This era in time is also deemed the Enlightenment era. What happened during these times was that as white people, people who would at some point in this whole era begin to refer to themselves as white. So I'm not going to go into that, but okay, we'll just leave it at that. I'll do another video talking about whiteness and where it comes from and how it was socially constructed, but we're not going to do that today. So we'll just go with the colloquial term, with the regular understanding of it. But as white people began to be confronted with the philosophies and the lifestyle and the high level of civilization and the seriously advanced styles of living that every other people on earth were enjoying, they began to feel similar to what they are feeling now, and that is that they began to feel inferior. They suffer from an inferiority complex, and this was a time in which they had to be faced with it. They were going to places like the Empire of the Mayans, who had beautiful libraries of books and had entire running water systems. All of these things that white civilizations did not have at that on the right path. So they were confronted with this. They were confronted with this here on Turtle Island, and they were confronted with it in Africa. They were confronted with it. When I say Turtle Island, I am including the Caribbean in my thought, but it's not necessarily okay. Okay. It is not necessarily included in the definition at all times. From what I'm conceiving of, I'm thinking of it right now. Turtle Island means the continent that we now think of as North America, South and Central America. I do not know if the islands of the Caribbean that are currently called Caribbean are included in that. I am including it in my statement, but I'm also going to make this parenthetical statement over to the side just so it is known. But everywhere these people would go, they were confronted by this higher level of civilization. Dare I say, superior level of civilization. They were also confronted by women and femmes and gender fluid people holding a high level of power, not being seen as lesser or lower. They were confronted by many different types of lifestyles and ways of thinking that were completely the opposite to their lifestyle and way of thinking. And so, instead of doing what most of us do, when we travel and we're introduced to new ways of life and we're introduced to different civilizations and different ways of being, every intelligent person says, wow, this is amazing. Okay, so now how do y'all do that? We get to know it, we learn about it. And if we find that it's useful, we incorporate it into our lifestyle, of course, while giving credit and honor to the people that introduced us to it. But for the white people of that time, note how I'm careful not to say Europeans, because in their white power movements, they actually have targeted the original Europeans, Eastern Europeans. But like I said, that's another video for another time. But the white people of that time, when they were confronted with these realities, they decided that they must create something that made these realities seem inferior to the colonialism and the capitalism and the patriarchy that they were forcing on everyone else. Now, remember, all three of these things can be described very succinctly and perfectly by a term created by our sister Janelle Hobson in the book Venus in the Dark: white masculinist imperialism. That was their lifestyle since the times of ancient Greece. They created this lifestyle in ancient Greece, and as time moved forward, they kept with the masculinist imperialism, and then they added whiteness to it, because at the beginning of these times, whiteness did not exist. It was during these times that whiteness was added. And what I'm sharing with you today is one of the ways in which whiteness was added and whiteness was constructed. All right, so they were confronted with all of these things, and they saw that as more people in their countries, in their nations, would be introduced to these lifestyles, that people would begin to see that these lifestyles were superior. Indeed, many white people had already been introduced to the lifestyles of other people and had understood that they were superior and had taken them on. And of course, we are never to forget that for 700 years, the black people of Africa called the Moors, and I think that they called them Moors to try to make it seem like it was only the Moroccans, or to try to make it seem like it was only people of Islamic faith, when in actuality, the groups of black people that ruled Europe at that time, Spain in particular, were from all over Africa and had all different faiths. Of course, some of them being traditional African faiths. But they had already been ruled for 700 years by black people. So there were, of course, large swatches of Europeans that understood that black civilization was superior and that black civilization was something to be paid attention to and something to be followed. So what happened in the Enlightenment era was that a way of thought, a philosophy, had to be created in order to make black philosophy and black thought appear to be inferior. So, a group of rich white men, colonizers, and slave holders, many of them also well known open abusers of white women. Because when you're a colonizer and a slaveholder, you're already an abuser of black people and black women and femmes. But many of these people were also well known abusers of white women and also predators. But they came together And they began to create this way of thought called Enlightenment philosophy. And this philosophy was important because all of the people with the money at that time were contributing to what was being said. And the money is important because these are the people that were leading these expeditions. These are the people who owned these big old pieces of land and these big old plantations. Think Monticello in Virginia, because Thomas Jefferson was a big part of the Enlightenment. So during the Enlightenment era, one of the main thinkers and thought leaders at this time was Descartes. Descartes. One of the main thinkers at the time was Descartes. And Descartes began to break thought down into categories so that he could say what type of thought was superior and what type of thought was inferior. And any type of thought that did not fit within his own socio-political norms, within his own mind, he began to refer to as irrational. It is from Descartes that we get the breakdown of rational and irrational thought. This is important because what happens then is that the entire lifestyle of Black people all over the earth, the entire lifestyle of all of the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island could then be laughed at, could then be treated as inferior, could then be said to be non-scientific. So that's what happened. They came into contact with these people. These people were telling them all of life is connected. All of life has a network under the earth, and all of life has a spiritual network. We are all connected. And so, in our every action, we have to take into consideration the connection that we have to everything else. And so our Native American ancestors, our indigenous ancestors here on Turtle Island, said that in our every action, we are to consider the next 7 generations. So not only are we to take into account the trees and the soil and the bees and the ants and the butterflies and the birds and the fish, not only are we to take all of our relations, Matakiye or Yasin, as our Lakota ancestors would say, all of my relations, we are all of family. We are all actually physically related and spiritually related. Not only are we to take that into account, but we are to take into account how this action would affect our children, our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, our great great grandchildren, our great grandchildren, and so on. The wisdom that they were coming into contact with was teaching them. If you continue, was saying literally, if you continue to grow things in the soil like that, you are damaging the soil. In damaging the soil, you are hurting yourself because the soil is your relation. The soil is your family. The soil is your kin. The soil is your relative. So we were trying to teach them all of these things. And what happened right up until, I would say, 2016, 2017? What happened right up until then? Everything that we were trying to teach them was ridiculed. They called our beliefs animism. And they said that Black and brown people believe that everything is connected and everything has a soul, and that everything has a right to exist, and that everything should have a voice. They called it animism, right? And they looked upon it as a lower form of philosophy as well as a lower form of religious tradition. And they made fun of it and they laughed at it. They looked at our oral history and they said that oral history holds no weight. The only history that holds weight is history that had been written down. So let's rewind. When they came across the ancient civilizations, sorry guys, this traffic is doing something just a little bit crazy. They came across the ancient Mayan civilizations. I can't remember if it's the Mayans or the Incans. I may be wrong. But an ancient civilization in South and Central America and the area now known as Mexico, This civilization had libraries of books, codices, right? They had libraries of written scrolls about everything. So there was a point in time when they were saying only the written word can be taken seriously, not oral history, not stuff passed from mouth to ear. And so you know what happened. You already know what happened. When they got down there and they were trying to take those people's land, they burned as many of those codices as possible. They burned as many of them as possible so that they could continue to say only the written word can be taken seriously. Only the written word is part of the academy, part of the words that we place weight on, part of the words that we listen to, part of the words that rule our entire political, social, economic system. So they burned their written words. Now, there were also written languages throughout Africa, right? There were also written languages throughout indigenous America. There were written languages in all of these places. But they took the evidence of that and tried their best to destroy it. All right. So we have all of that going on. Then I became aware of it around about 2015, 2016. You guys have heard me speak on it before, but today I'm going to do a deep dive. Then around about 2015, 2016, all of a sudden, we start getting all of these discoveries. All of a sudden, research has found. And I was like, everything that I was seeing that research has found had been things that these ancient civilizations had been telling them since they first came here to colonize, since they first came here to take and to steal and to pillage and to assault and to do harm. Now all of a sudden there's a network under the earth, mycelium and just the trees, and they all connected together and they're speaking to each other and they're talking to each other. We never knew the trees were talking. How y'all didn't know the trees were talking when we told y'all the trees was talking? How y'all didn't know that it was a network under there when we told y'all it was a network under there? All of a sudden they're saying, if you do the latest one that they did was if you bend all the way down and put your head all the way down on the ground and bend your knees all the way down, they calling it prostrating. Then this does something wonderful to your muscles and to your central nervous system and to your brain and to your ability to remember. This keeps you grounded within your body. This also helps your brain to maintain its plasticity, its neuroplasticity throughout your life, putting you in a lower putting you at lower danger for dementia. They're saying that's the newest thing they're saying. But didn't we tell y'all hundreds of years ago the importance of prostrating in the morning? Hadn't we been saying that? Hadn't our grandmothers been telling us kneel down and pray every day? Kneel all the way down, take your body all the way down every day? How is that new? Oh, now this is new. Oh, well, we have found that if you dig too much in the earth and you take too much of the fossil fuels out of the earth, and you continue to use that and shoot it back up into the atmosphere, that then the atmosphere will do things that will make the earth unlivable for you. Didn't we say that you had to consider all of your relations in everything that you were doing, in every move that you were making? Didn't we teach y'all this? Oh, well, the bees are about to become extinct. And if the bees become extinct, then it'll only be so many more years that humans will be able to live. Didn't we tell y'all that? Didn't we say we are all related? And if you don't take care of each member of this web, this beautiful circle of life, we too will suffer. These are our relatives. These are our relations. Didn't we teach y'all that? So I want to say that while all of these studies are coming out, while all of these discoveries are being made, as Black women and femmes, Be loud about the fact that your grandmama had already said that. My grandmama raised us teaching us this. And then I went off to school and y'all tried to tell me it wasn't true. I remember one time I was talking about some oral history in a class, in one of my graduate classes. And the professor told me oral history is not trustworthy, only written history is trustworthy. I said, my grandma ain't got no reason to lie to me, but the people who wrote the books do. That's literally what I told him, and he just sat there quiet. But of course, oral history is still not considered factual. It's still not considered verifiable. It's still not considered part of the academy. But I want us to be loud. Be loud in the defense of the genius of our mothers. Do not allow the genius of your mothers to be stolen again. This will be the second time that they're trying to steal it. The first time they just took it and they hid it and they said, don't listen to this. This is ridiculous. This is not verifiable. This is not academic. This is not rational. So they took it then and probably have been studying it all of these hundreds of years, probably been trying to unravel it and make it so that they themselves could understand it. Because outside of a cultural context, it's almost impossible to understand someone else's philosophy. Right? Philosophies exist within cultural context. So since they took it out of the cultural context and called it nonsense and kept the rest of us from listening to it and heeding it and paying attention to it, they themselves had to study it to try to understand it because they took it outside of the context in which it made sense. But back to my point, be loud and be serious and be thorough about your defense of the genius of our mothers. Call it out. When you see someone saying a new study just came out that says so and so, say my grandmama raised us with that. We've been knowing this. This ain't new. We've been knowing this. My grandmother taught us that. My mother taught us that. We was raised living like this. Say that. I remember the first time I heard people talking about attachment parenting. And they was talking about, let the baby sleep in the bed with you. Um, keep the baby close by. Don't put the baby all the way down the hall in another room by itself. You know, don't treat the baby like it's a stranger. Treat the baby like it's part of the family. Keep it next to you. And they called all of that attachment parenting. Attach the baby to you, wear the baby. And I said, we was raised like this. But when we had our baby sleeping in our room, y'all told us that was poverty. Y'all said we gotta I'm listening to my GPS. Y'all said the only reason we don't have a nursery for our babies is because we too poor. Y'all made fun of us for having our baby sleep in the room with us and sometimes even sleep in the bed with us. Y'all made fun of us for that. But now it's attachment parenting, and so now it's okay. I will never forget, and y'all gonna hear me talk about it a whole bunch, how y'all came through our neighborhoods and told our mothers to stop nursing us. Because you understood that with the breast milk comes the wisdom of the mother. With the breast milk comes the immunity of the mother. With the breast milk there is a bond built between the baby and the mother that is almost unbreakable. That is pretty much unbreakable. And so you taught us. Nestle funded a campaign to go specifically into Black neighborhoods and teach our mothers that breastfeeding was bad, right? But now all of a sudden, breast is best. Everybody should be breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is what makes the babies the smartest. Breastfeeding is what makes the babies more emotionally healthy. Breastfeeding is what makes the babies feel a normal, natural bond and connection so that they're able to form emotional bonds and connections for the rest of their lives. Breastfeeding is what does that. Y'all then came and now are saying this. Studies show. Studies don't show shit. My mother always told me this. No, my mother didn't. My grandmothers always told me this. My mother believed the hype. My mother didn't breastfeed any of us. But as we begin to have children, I am blessed and honored that my older sister listened to my grandmothers and she breastfed. And so as I saw her breastfeeding, I knew that once I had children, I would breastfeed too. But that was always our wisdom, was to breastfeed the child. Always. You only fed the child outside of the breast if something happened and the mother couldn't breastfeed it or if the mother was not available. But outside of that, we always breastfed, right? There's a new study going around now, and it's saying boys raised in single parent homes are actually more emotionally connected, smarter, kinder, nicer. Okay, everybody knew this. This isn't new. If the home was abusive, if the home was dangerous, if there was no stability in the home, a home with stability is always going to be better and it's always going to produce more stable children. This isn't new. Hold on. Okay. This isn't new. So when you see the genius of your mothers being called out in an anonymous study or even a study with names, even an anonymous one that is anonymous, whether it's anonymous or anonymous, when you see the genius of your mothers being stolen, speak on it. Put a comment under those. Don't let those just roll on by. Don't let those just be made to look like a discovery and a new thing that these people have found when you know that for hundreds of years this is what we believed and you guys ridiculed us for believing it. Ridiculed us into silence about our beliefs. Ridiculed us into shame about our beliefs. Still to this day, you will find black people who are ashamed of ancient African beliefs and indigenous beliefs. Still to this day, you will find black people who are ashamed of hoodoo and root work and conjure and that beautiful mixture of black and indigenous beliefs. You will find them because they shamed us into that with that lie of rational thinking, with that lie of enlightenment. Now everybody sees that's what's going to save us. We've got to turn back to that. We've got to get back to that. And so now the studies are popping up. Oh, there was a study that said because they're still trying to give it that academic verification that is not required if it's coming from my grandmother. My grandmother lived so many years. I know that she knows what's best. I can listen to her and believe that she knows what's best due to her life experience. But they're still trying to say, oh, it was a study. When you see that shit, when you hear that shit, call it out. Say, no, my grandmama been saying this. This ain't new. This ain't no new study. This is an old way of life. This is how we always did it. When they started talking about um recycle and reuse, that was the other thing that had me feeling completely and totally angry, and that was so very familiar to me. Recycle and reuse, I was like, what are they talking about? When you have a jar, you should wash it out and use it again. I was like, oh, you just talking about life? Oh, you just talking about life? You just talking about regular life? Because baby, a black grandmama is gonna wash and use a piece of aluminum foil again. Baby, a black grandmama is gonna wash and use a Ziploc baggie again. A black grandmama is gonna turn a butter dish into a Tupperware dish and the cookie tin into the thing to hold her sewing stuff and to hold your bows and barrettes for your hair. Come on now. Come on with it. And now they talking about reduce, recycle, reuse. You gonna put a name on it and say studies have shown, and also had the unmitigated gall to be like they had to go into African communities and teach them how to do this. Quit lying. Quit lying. You a lie, as we used to say where I'm from. We used to just say you a lie when you told a blatant lie like that. We pronounced the deception over your whole body and being. You a lie. We literally said that.
So as we hear these things, please speak out. As we hear these things, do not make it so that the rocks will cry out on your behalf. Cry out on behalf of your ancestral mothers. Speak up on behalf of your ancestral mothers. Talk about their genius that has always been used, that is the same genius that created this civilization that we now live in, is the same genius that was stolen to create this constitution and this way of life and to create the wealth that built this entire country. That is the genius that we are living and walking and breathing upon. When you see it being attributed to someone else, speak up, speak out, and say, nope, my grandmother always taught us that. Nope, we've been living this way. Nope, this is the way that we have always lived. Do not allow it to be attributed to someone that is not your grandmother. Do not allow it to be attributed to liars and people who are too ignorant to understand their connection to Earth Mother and to understand their connection to other human beings, to understand even their connection to their own children and grandchildren. They were always too ignorant to see that. And only now that they feel themselves to be on the brink of destruction are they going to come out and say, oh, you guys were right. I guess it was all connected. But they are still too stuck in their own ideas to say, oh, you guys were right. They are still too married to deception and criminality to say, you guys were right. They are still trying to say, we came up with this idea, when this is an idea that our ancestors lived on forever. When this is how we built those magnificent structures, those magnificent societies, and those magnificent ways of life that still govern the world today. Speak out in defense of the genius of your ancestral mothers. Speak out. All right. I have reached my destination. Exactly. Exactly. Ashe. They did say co-sleeping was wrong. They definitely said co-sleeping was wrong. I recall that. Hold on, I'm just going through, getting the ignoramuses and the ugmos out. I remember being told that even when my children were being born, that co-sleeping was wrong. But I had sense enough not to listen. It seemed crazy. I tried it, I think, 2 or 3 times, and it just wasn't going to work out. When it was easier for me to turn over and put a breast in the mouth than it was for me to get up and do 5,000 other things. Right? All right. Let me go. I have a place to be, so I'm going to run on in here and get on to this brunch. Ecstasy, abundance, and bliss, as always. To everyone within the sound of my voice who is wishing the same for me and mine. And as always, we wish the lessons of life as they are coming through so quickly and so swiftly. We see the lessons of life meeting them. We're watching it. Now it's here on the world stage. All we have to do is keep our eyes open and watch the lessons of life. Meet those who maligned our ancestors. We're watching the lessons of life. Meet those who have tried to convince us for centuries that we are inferior. We're watching the lessons of life. Meet those who believed in their heart that women were made less and that women have brains and bodies that should be beneath them, that should be crushed under their feet in that lifestyle called submission. We're watching the lessons of life meet them. We're watching the lessons of life meet those who taught us that animals and plants and bees and bugs were inferior and that they had less, that they should have less access to the stuff of life and to the beauty of the globe than we do. We're watching the lessons of life meet them. So we pray the lessons of life on those who are ignorant enough to wish us otherwise. We pray the lessons of life on those who continue to malign the genius of our mothers and who continue to steal, discredit, and take credit for the genius that created this entire wombniverse and keeps us all alive. Love to each and every one. Ashe. Please share, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.